Hi everyone, welcome back to masterclass number 3 in collaboration with Morley Rituals. I'm Claire Pafitis, also known as the Ayurveda coach, and today's session is we're back in the kitchen and we're talking about herbs and spices again, but a little bit different this time. So last week was all about the Agni. So week 1 actually we talked about what the Agni is, what it means, what to look out for, and last week I talked you through a few sort of simple home remedies for looking after your Agni and your digestive fire. But it doesn't stop there, because I have a big passion for all things kind of herbal, spices, home remedies, do it yourself. And I just wanted to share a couple of really simple ones with you, but also more importantly, look at some of the herbs that are available to us here in the UK or that can be grown more locally to where we live. Some of these things you can grow yourself, and maybe ways to use them that maybe you hadn't thought about before, things you hadn't known about. So I'm going to take you through, I've got a little array of different ingredients here. I'm going to talk about what they do in terms of Ayurveda, how they can help your body and your health, and let's get started. So first thing I wanted to talk about, actually this is quite an Ayurvedic one. It's called asafoetida, or also known as hing. So it's like a little yellow looking spice, and this I just wanted to tell people about today because it is Vata season. It's autumn Vata season. It's cold, it's dry, it's rough, it's windy out there, and I know lots of people are really feeling the effects, and the digestion's kind of feeling a bit gassy, a bit bloated. There's lots of air in the system. So I wanted to tell you about asafoetida because it's fantastic to use in cooking, especially as an antidote for things like beans, lentils. So it helps the body to really be able to digest those nicely. You only need a little pinch. So whenever I cook legumes or lentils, anything like that, adding a little pinch of asafoetida in with the cooking is really helpful to your body to help you to be able to digest that nicely. And as it's Vata season, I thought it would be worth talking about that one today. It might be one that maybe you've seen on the supermarket shelves and you thought, what do I do with that? It is a very sort of pungent flavour, but as I say, you only really need a little pinch of it in the cooking, or if you're making a curry, a dal, anything like that, then it's really nice for helping you be able to digest the food rather than adding too much flavour. So give that a try. That's also because I know lots of people come to me and say, oh, I can't eat lentils because they make me feel gassy and bloated. So next time, try with a pinch of asafoetida. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, as it's Vata season, is sesame. So here I've got sesame seeds, but also sesame oil. So sesame in general is just a miracle in Ayurveda. It's used in loads of the medicines as a base, and sesame oil again is really fantastic for if you feel you have a lot of Vata in your doshic makeup, or if you're feeling the effects of autumn and Vata right now, then having that warm oil massage with something like sesame. The reason it alleviates Vata in the body is because it has the complete opposite properties. So it's warming and it's unctuous and it's heavy, whereas Vata is light and dry and cold and rough. So it's absolutely fantastic for Vata conditions. But then I wanted to talk about sesame seed, because I think, again, this is one of these incredible little seeds that kind of goes a little bit unnoticed sometimes, a bit unloved. I don't know how many of you have sesame seeds sitting in the back of the cupboard in your kitchen, but sesame seeds are an absolutely fantastic source of calcium. I think something like 1/4 of a cup of raw sesame seeds is the equivalent of a cup of milk. So 1/4 of a cup of raw sesame seeds gives you about 350 milligrams of calcium, and a cup of milk gives you around 300 milligrams of calcium. So that packs quite a big punch of calcium, doesn't it really? And especially, I know a lot of people out there are kind of converting to vegan diets and trying to reduce dairy intake, but then you're worrying about your bone health and getting enough calcium. So get sprinkling those sesame seeds onto your food, so onto a stir fry, blitz them up if you're doing a little warm smoothie, or I don't don't know, anything really, into the bread maker. You could kind of add some sesame seeds onto your bread, your homemade bread. Just get sprinkling on your morning porridge, whatever you're having, and that will give you a really good dose of calcium. Also lots of other minerals, I think zinc, calcium, selenium, magnesium as well. It's really hard actually to get magnesium. I read something recently about the soils are very depleted in all these natural minerals now because of over farming and techniques and so on. So even if you're eating really well, eating lots of your leafy greens, which would usually be a good source of calcium, magnesium, still sometimes people are feeling they're a bit deficient. And Ayurveda doesn't really talk about supplements or doing it that way, so I wanted to show you how you can do it a different way. So sesame seeds, another one of my kind of kitchen cupboard saviours I always have on hand. Then let's move on. So we've got 2 more different spices here. First one, actually I'm going to do that next. First one is cardamom. So these are the whole green cardamom pods. They just smell absolutely amazing. I just love the smell of cardamom. It's absolutely delicious. Cardamom is light and it's a sattvic spice. So it has, sattvic things have a lot of quality of kind of purity and lightness, very clean and cleansing kind of herb. So it helps with digesting things like dairy. That's why I often find things like cardamom and custard, they go really nicely together. And cardamom in milk, it's very, very, it tastes delicious. It's a match made in heaven, but also it's doing something. It's helping you to digest that dairy as well. Cardamom also is very effective as an antidote for coffee. So often you'll find in sort of on Ayurvedic blogs, on the internet and stuff, people are talking about using cardamom in coffee. That's because it helps to reduce the kind of heating pitta qualities of the caffeine. So a little pinch of cardamom in your morning coffee can help. And the other thing about cardamom is it contains vitamin C and iron. So it's often a really good natural remedy for if your iron levels are feeling a bit low. And the way I would usually make that is to boil some cardamom pods, maybe 4 or 5 cardamom pods in a cup of milk or almond milk, and then to drink that warm. So that's a really nice antidote for anemia or feeling low in iron. So the mighty cardamom pod does lots of amazing things. Okay, next up on my table of treats, star anise. So I read something quite funny recently. I think it was in Waitrose magazine or something. There was a poll for readers and most loved and unused spices in their cupboard, and poor old star anise was the one that was voted that people bought it for some recipe or other and then it sat in the back of their cupboard unused and unloved. I think people don't really know what to do with it. It is really lovely stewed down with fruits and things. It's really nice with pears and apples. It puts a really nice kind of aniseedy flavour to it, quite nice and sweet. But look, there's lots of things you can do with star anise. And I think one of the best things you can use it for is to make it in a kind of tea, probably with some cinnamon, because star anise contains a lot of antioxidants, immunity boosting compounds, something called shikimic acid, which is actually used a lot in sort of antiviral, anti-flu medication. So it's going to help with your immunity and that sort of thing, coughs and colds. It's a kind of tried and tested traditional remedy is using star anise. So I would use maybe 7 of the little flowers. I don't think I've got a perfect one, but 7 of those little flowers, 2 cups of water and half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and simmer that on the stove for about 5 minutes and then strain that, let it cool down and drink it. And that's a really nice tea for coughs and colds, if you're feeling a bit fluey, or just in general with flu season coming up, and you know there's a virus going around at the moment, in case you haven't heard of it, then you could try having some star anise tea every day to help with your immunity. It'd be really good. You know, it has lots of other wonderful things that it does. You can make your own insecticide. So there's a compound in star anise which insects don't like. So again, you can boil up the star anise with some water into a little spray bottle and you've got your own little insecticide when the summer comes. And again, lots of trace minerals, magnesium, zinc, all those kind of things can be found in star anise. So absolutely fantastic. If you don't want to do any of those things and it's sitting in the back of your cupboard, it's really nice with stewed fruits. So apples, pears, berries, something like that. Stew them down with a couple of star anise pods in there, and that's really tasty. Nice gentle aniseed flavour. Okay, so moving on, I've got some herbs that are perhaps more locally grown that you'll be even more familiar with, but importantly things we can grow in our own gardens as well. In terms of sustainability and being able to get hold of these things, it's really good to know that there are medicines in the back garden that we can use, things that we can use. So start with basil first of all. Everyone loves a bit of basil. Smell is amazing. I try and have some growing in a little pot all year round on the windowsill. Again, this is really viewed as a very sattvic food or herb in Ayurveda, and again that sattvic quality, that lightness, that purity, that clean quality of eating sattvic foods. It's used, and I use it in cooking when you're using a lot of heavier food, so that's why we find it in Italian cooking, in the cheese sauces, in the pasta dishes. Italians know that you add the basil leaf, and that helps to break down the heaviness of the sauces or the heaviness of the food, and again make it a bit more easier to digest. So basil is a fantastic one to have lying about the house whenever you're cooking that kind of food. Bay leaves have a similar effect as basil as well, so they really help to cut through food that is damp or kind of heavy or sticky. So, and a little goes a long way. You can have a little bay tree growing in the garden, and you've straight away got a bit of an antidote then to when you're making kind of heavier, stickier food, and putting a bay leaf in while it's cooking. And obviously you get all that flavour as well from that lovely herb. Last up, rosemary. So friend of the English garden, really easy to grow. You don't even have to do anything much with rosemary. We bought a couple of plants a few years ago. They're really tiny, massive, great rosemary plant out in the garden now. And this one again is fantastic for colds, coughs and colds. So a few stems of rosemary, and if you just bash them up a little bit, haven't got my pestle and mortar, but break them up to release the oils, put them in a little teapot like that with some hot water, and just let that steep for 5 minutes, and you've got a lovely warming concoction to sip, and it really helps to ease coughs, particularly really good for respiratory conditions is rosemary. It can also help in the early stages of fever. So again, having something like this kind of tea, or boiling it up on the stove in a saucepan of hot water and then drinking that, it's known to help arrest fever in the early stages. So it's for coughs, colds, chills, that kind of thing. As we're moving into that season now and into winter, have some rosemary on hand, because it's really easy thing to just bung in a teapot like that and then have the drink. Vitamin C, vitamin A, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antifungal, and even antiseptic. So you could make a little, I know a lot of people write to me about things like athlete's foot, particularly tricky thing to try and get rid of. First of all, you need to make sure you're reducing your pitta in your body, but secondly, making a bath, a foot bath with lots of these lovely rosemary leaves and some warm water, and then dipping your feet in, a nice antifungal remedy for that. And again, rosemary, you can use it in cooking when you have heavier dishes. We use it with meat. If you're eating meat, helps to break that down a little bit as well as adding lots of flavour and aroma. It's quite a pungent and bitter taste, which is good, because we're often missing that taste, and it's really helpful to have that balance when you're having heavier foods. Last little tip with rosemary, stick it in a bowl of really steaming hot water, just like this, and you can use it as steam inhalation, or it's really nice in the bath. So I have been known to put a few sprigs of rosemary just like that in the bath, maybe with a few drops of eucalyptus oil as well, and that's a really lovely steamy, warming thing to do in the winter when it's cold and you've got a cold or you're feeling that way. I think that's everything herb and spice wise, but obviously I just wanted to I couldn't do kitchen saviours or kitchen heroes without talking about coconut oil, because who doesn't love a bit of coconut oil? So my husband uses it for oil pulling. He prefers that to sesame, probably a little bit because of the taste, and also I think it's a little bit more cooling, where he's quite pitta. And I use it, I just use this is just cold pressed coconut oil. I think it's for cooking, but it's the pure stuff. I use it on the ends of my hair, do a hair mask, put it all through my hair, leave it to soak in overnight, wash it out, shampoo first, don't add the water, do the shampoo on your dry hair, then add the water, otherwise you won't be able to get the oil out. Really nice conditioning mask. Only thing I would say about that is, if your body temperature runs cold, if you know you're quite kapha or quite vata, be careful, because it is very cooling. So you won't want to leave it on your head for too long, or just put it on the ends instead. I can get away with it because I'm quite pitta, so I have quite a lot of heat, but occasionally I'll leave it on too long and I'll start to get a bit of a runny nose or something, so then I know I've left it on too long. So just be careful because it's very cooling. And of course, it doubles up, you can use it for cooking too. So always have a tin of coconut oil knocking about the kitchen, and that's definitely one of my #1 kitchen saviours. So I hope that's been helpful. It's a little bit of Ayurveda here, a little bit of general what to do with herbs and spices, what all their properties are, what you can get out of them. You know, a lot of these things are packed with vitamins and minerals we don't even realise. So it's really good to experiment and see if you can feel the effects of incorporating more of these things into your diet. Not only are they going to help boost those digestive enzymes, which is what we're always talking about with the Agni, but you will get the added benefits of some of the vitamins and minerals. And as I said, you know, a lot of these things are antibacterial, antifungals. There's so many things at our fingertips. Before we reach for the medicine cabinet, we can go to the kitchen cabinet, to the kitchen cupboard. And I talk a bit more, so in my book, Balance Your Agni, I talk more about, you know, everyday kitchen herbs and spices, ingredients that we have. It just really fascinates me. You know, I didn't grow up in a household where we would do this sort of thing. It's definitely passing around the remedies, or what was the kaolin and morphine, or was that? Yeah, kaolin and morphine when you had a stomach bug. God knows what was in that. Well, morphine, I guess. And it's just, I think it's really good fun to find alternatives and to have a little play and to mix things up and you know, try things out for yourself, try your own remedies, see what works for you and get invented. So I hope that's inspired some of you to go out and look in the garden, or look in the back of your spice cupboard and see what's there, what's unused and unloved, and how you can use them more. And I'll see you all next week for our last class together, class number 4, and we'll be talking about the joy of Ayurveda. And remember, all of this is to try and give something back, so we're supporting the Refugee Kitchen, and there's a link at the bottom of this video if you'd like to give something back and make a small donation. Thanks everyone, see you later!